I hereby call this the fourth meeting of the House Standing Committee on Families and Children to order. Please make sure to silence your cell phones. Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Baker. Representative Banta.
Here.
Representative Kleins. Representative Decker. Representative Dietz.
Here.
Representative Elliott. Representative Fleming. Representative Gooch. Representative Proctor.
Here.
Representative Rayburn. Representative Raymond. Representative Riley.
Here.
Representative Rourks.
Here.
Representative Tate. Representative Wilner. Representative Wilson. Chair Hebron.
Present. Thank you. This morning we're going to go a little bit out of order. If we're going to do Senate Bill 135 first, Senator Funky Fromeyer, can you please make your way to the table? Please introduce yourself for the record and introduce your guest.
Good morning and thank you. The Shelley Funky Fromeyer, Senate District 24, Campbell, Bracken, Pendleton, and Abby Piper.
Abby Piper, Piper Smith.
Senate Bill 135 is amended by Senate Committee Substitute 1 and Senate Title 1. It is an act relating to perinatal mental health, and that is aimed at supporting our families upstream. It's the formation of the family. So we're recognizing some of the work done by Dr. Ashley Belcher, our Commonwealth Therapy, that 1 in 10 men and 2 in 5 women suffer from mental and emotional distress.
We have a motion on the bill and a second. Do anyone have any questions? Does anyone have any questions? It's early and I've not had coffee. Okay. We're going to go ahead and move forward with the vote since we've got a motion on the table.
That sounds
Secretary,
excellent.
please call the roll.
Representative Baker. Yes. Representative Banta.
Yes.
Representative Kleins.
Yes.
Representative Decker.
Yes.
Representative Dietz.
Yes.
Representative Elliott. Representative Fleming. Representative Gooch. Representative Proctor.
Yes.
Representative Rayburn. Yes. Representative Raymond. Yes. Representative Riley.
Yes.
Representative Rourks.
Yes.
Representative Tate. Yes. Representative Wilner. Representative Wilson. Aye. Chair Hebron.
Yes. The bill passes 15-0 with favorable expression, and it should do the same on the floor. Congratulations for getting your first bill through the House
Thank you.
committee.
Would we want to do that on consent, Representative
We do
Hebron?
not have consent in the House.
Okay.
Yeah, nice try.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next guest will be Senate Bill 48. Senator Meredith, please make your way to the table and introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Steve Meredith. I'm State Senator for the 5th District, which includes Meade, Breckenridge, Grayson, Edmondson, and no longer Edmondson. I'm sorry, I'm still in my whole district, Butler and Ohio counties. And I am here to speak this morning on Senate Bill 48.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion on House Committee Substitute 1 since it is my committee. Substitute, do I have a second? Second. Okay, and all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. We are now working with House Committee Substitute 1 on this bill. Please, does anyone have any questions on that? Okay. Yes, I will go ahead and give it to Senator Meredith.
Certainly be glad to speak to this. This came as a result of conversations we've had ongoing with Secretary Freelander. Specific to, at the time, what was called the Office of Inspector General, which we were creating a new Commonwealth Office of Inspector General. And the duties and responsibilities that we were shifting to that office included licensure and surveying of facilities. And after conversations with him, we agreed that it was probably more effective to keep that under the cabinet than within that new office. Also, the original bill didn't delegate the powers necessary for that office to perform itself. issue subpoenas, enter facilities, and so forth. So we gave them that power. Also, we made sure that the funding for each of the programs that we move follow to the new areas. That's the essence of that committee substitute.
Oh, can we? I'm going to let you explain the bill really quick, Senator Meredith, just to give everyone an update, and then I'll go to questions. And Representative Rayburn, you'll be first on the list.
I think it's only 189 pages. I'm not sure there'll be any questions, and I'm sure y'all have read this one in great detail. I know it's an intimidating bill, but I assure you that most of it is because of conforming statutes and things that we need to rely on these new areas of responsibilities that we're delineating. But the genesis of this bill was concurrent resolution 20 from the 2022 session that called for a task force to look at the reorganization of the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. And you folks recognize this is our largest cabinet in state government, over 7,000 employees, $19 billion budget. They have total fiscal responsibilities more like for $30 billion. And our intent solely was to try to make it more effective, more efficient, and certainly more responsive to our constituents, being that large. So we were looking at how we could identify efficiencies in just a better way to do state government. I will tell you that our task force members included the Senators Julie Rocky Adams, Senator Berg, Senator Alvarado. Our co-chair was Representative Meade, Representatives Kimberly Moser, Danny Bentley, and Katara Heron, and a great group to work with. So we met over the 5 months during the summer. And I tell you, this is a very overwhelming process because of the size of the cabinet itself. And one of the first recommendations you're going to see is continue our task force for another year. Because as we got into it, we recognized that the first thing we had to do is look at the organizational structure of the cabinet, which again was huge. And I want to give kudos to Secretary Freelander. He was very cooperative, made total access to all his personnel and departments, and we had great testimony. But again, we learned very early on that this was going to be a multi-year proposition. So the essence of this bill is to focus on the reorganization of the cabinet, again, try to identify efficiencies. And if I could, Madam Chair, what I'll do is go straight to the recommendations that came out of our task force. First being, again, continuation of the task force for another interim period. Probably the most impactful recommendation was the second one, and that's to move child support enforcement to the Attorney General's office, because we are $1.4 billion in arrear in child support payments. And this is not a new proposition for Kentucky. This has gone on for several years. As a matter of fact, I was provided with a study from 2007 that was commissioned by the Kentucky Association of County Attorneys that had reviewed the situation, and they had recommended that this function be moved to the Attorney General's office. So that's our first recommendation. The second is assign disability determination to the Education and Labor Cabinet, and that one should be, I think, quite obvious. We want to get people back to work, and by moving that to this particular cabinet, we think we can work hand in hand and recognize people's abilities and disabilities and try to get them back into the workplace. The next recommendation is to assign the Office of Children with Special Health Care Needs to the Department of Public Health. The primary motivation for that is that's where the physicians are, and we think that more closely aligns the needs of this particular department with the overall needs of our children and provides the level of support they haven't had before. Next was to establish a new independent Commonwealth Office of Ombudsman as an independent office administratively attached to the Auditor of Public Accounts. Because what we heard from so many people was there's a little bit of conflict of interest if you've got an issue with the cabinet or any element of the cabinet, that this office reports to the cabinet secretary. So we want to give it some independence, and we think that'll give some integrity to the program. So that's why it's being moved to the Auditor of Public Accounts. We also, as I mentioned, establishing a new freestanding independent Commonwealth of Audits and Investigations. And again, this goes back to your question, Representative Raymond. In our original bill, it was the Office of Inspector General. But you folks may know that most of cabinets have an Office of Inspector General. So it gets kind of confusing. We've got this now Commonwealth Office of Inspector General, and going to have all these sub-entities and other cabinets. It's also Office of Inspector General. So we decided yesterday that we would change the name and probably give it a broader focus. Right now, the focus is pretty much on this particular cabinet. We think the potential, though, is kind of consolidate all these functions in the future under one office of the Commonwealth Office of Audits and Investigations. And again, this will be within the executive branch. The Next recommendation is to place the administrative review and hearing functions within Cabinet for Health and Family Services under this jurisdiction of the Attorney General's office as well, and that's consistent with moving what was the Office of Inspector General to that office. We've also have a recommendation to require the cabinets to identify and eliminate barriers to administering the 15C waiver programs. You know, these are great programs that we have within our cabinet, and most of you folks know that we have a tremendous waiting list for people trying to access one of these waiver programs. And we think there's a barriers within the department because of lack of communication, lack of coordination. So we're asking them to make a more concentrated effort to try to do that.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the proposed House Substitute 1, please.
Okay, I think I hear you have a motion on the bill as proposed by House Substitute 1.
Correct.
Okay, we got a motion, and do we have a second? Okay, we've got a motion and a second. The first question is from Representative Rayburn.
So I've got a couple questions, if I may. Thank you, first of all, for the bill. I like the section pertaining to audits and investigations. I think that'll be necessary, especially for DCBS and their processes with fraudulent experiences within that cabinet. Because a lot of those DCBS workers are overloaded trying to work those tier cases. But my question within this bill would come, you know, I see we're removing the Department of Guardianship Services under DCBS.
Yes.
So I think members of this committee received a letter from an individual yesterday talking about issues of why this department was moved back in 2008 over to the Department for Aging and Independent Living. And attached in that letter was an audit of findings and issues within DCBS. So my question is, in that audit form, Senator, I'm not sure if you've seen this letter that I'm referencing.
I have.
It's from a worker that it has been there for quite some time. But in the audit, it noted the severe deficiencies in staff shortages. In this bill, how are we going to ensure that we're not going to have the same issues that occurred back in 2008 that caused this department to be moved in the first place?
When I speak specific to the audit of 2008, I think that the move that was made there didn't solve a problem. It just moved a problem. I think we've got a lot of areas within the cabinet that are underfunded, understaffed, and I don't think that move really was consistent with trying to solve the basic issue. I think moving it to DCBS, if the problem originally was in DCBS, there's been a change of personnel. There's a change in I think direction there, but if there's a problem, we need to address the problem, and I think it's more appropriate aligned if it's under DCBS than where it is presently. But with this and Adult Protective Services, you've got two commissioners that really are kind of in the same sphere, but they may not be coordinating their efforts together. I think moving them back to DCBS would do that and be more effective and efficient form of government for us. And I appreciate the folks' concern about any move. And one of the epiphanies I've had during this process is that everyone wants to change state government until you try to change state government. And then it becomes protectionism. And none of these moves are intended to harm anyone. It's, to provide the resources they need to do the job well and do it in a coordinated fashion. And we've had numerous conversations with Secretary Freelander. Again, I want to give kudos to him. He's been very open and honest. We've had some very good interaction. We've yielded to some of his concerns. But I can assure you, this has never been one that has been paramount in our discussions. He understands what we're trying to accomplish here and has not protested this move.
Can I ask another question, please?
Yes.
So my next question, what is the staffing like right now at DGS? And I guess in part of that question, how will these cases also be processed differently than what they are now? The reason I ask is, within DCBS currently, they process cases via call services, and it's a statewide initiative. So you've got workers in Jefferson County processing cases in Pike County. There's a disconnect within the programming, and it's actually set the state up for a lot of fraudulent cases, to be honest with you. But under this particular department, how will these cases be processed? How will people be able to get a hold of their workers to initiate the processing of these claims?
Well, thank you for your question, and I'd have two answers to that. First, remember that the first phase of this task force is to focus on the organizational structure in itself. And this next time, we'll be looking at operational aspects of it. We didn't have time. We couldn't get in the deep weeds of how things work on that programmatic level. We'll do that next time. But this is focused just on a reorganization and moving folks to an area that we think are more consistent with the goals and responsibilities of each respective division. So I really can't answer your specific question because we didn't get into that realm of operations at this point.
I've got one more. Thank you. So on the way up, I was talking to a couple of workers that I had the pleasure of working with within the department. And they brought up something that I didn't think of last night when I read this committee sub at 9 o'clock. You know, when the department was moved back in 2008, and where it's at now, the state performs M&E, which is a federal audit, but it's done within the inner workings of DCBS, and also QC checks, quality control checks. I'm interested, do we have any of the data on any of those audits and those findings from 2008 to currently to see if it was beneficial of moving this department? I know you said you've got to fix the problem, but have we actually looked at the data to see what these M&E federal audits and state QC checks are showing?
No, we have not, because again, very early on, we decided that as broad as this review is, that we had to focus on the organizational structure, not the operational aspects of it. I would well anticipate that when we come back, if this bill is passed, that our next session we will work on these operational aspects that you're addressing and review that information. But no, we have not seen that information.
Okay. Can I ask one more? I promise it's the last one.
One more.
Thank you. So in the letter that individual also had sent, and I found this to be rather interesting, does the Department of Guardianship Services, is there an incentive per state statute to receive funds based on the cases that they process?
I'm not aware if there is one. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, with a motion and a second on the bill with the proposed House Committee substitute, Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Baker? Yes. Representative Banta?
Yes.
Representative Kleins?
Yes.
Representative Decker?
Yes.
Representative Dietz?
Yes.
Representative Elliott?
May I explain my vote? I really appreciate the work that you have done, Senator, and I know we've worked together in the past on a now defunct committee, Medicaid Oversight. And so I appreciate the work that you've done. I know it's been a great undertaking. I do have some more questions, so I'm going to vote aye to move it along today and reserve the right to change my vote, but I do want to compliment you on the work that you've done in the task force, and I know this is a passion of yours, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Representative Fleming?
I just want to make a quick comment. Quick comment is that there's a lot of efforts that's going to be forthcoming next year, and I know through the task force and through your leadership, it's going to get down to the nitty gritty to look at these operational issues, and being as where your background, it's to be very viable that you basically look at the overall high altitude perspective, and now you're going to get down to nitty gritty next year. So I do appreciate your efforts. So thank you, and I vote aye.
Madam Chair, if I could, just a brief comment to that is you notice in the bill, there's extended deadlines for all these changes that we're making in anticipation that we'll hit some bumps along the way, particularly with child support payments. That's not going to be implemented fully until July of 2025. So we're not just going to just push this through. We want to be careful in how we approach this. But I thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Gooch, Representative Proctor,
Yes.
Representative Rayburn,
May I explain my vote, please?
Yes.
Senator Mayer, thank you for the work you've done on the bill. There is a lot of work that needs to be done within the department, so I appreciate the things that were addressed in this bill. I do have concerns, as I mentioned, with some of the questions that I had, especially with the processing of how these cases will be worked. I know a lot of the food stamp and Medicaid cases and other cases within the department cannot pass a QC check. They cannot pass federal audits because of the statewide processing. So that gives me hesitation with moving this department back under DCBS with the issues that they currently have going on. But I'm going to vote yes today because this bill is overall good. Thank you.
Representative Raymond,
Pass.
Representative Riley, Representative Rorks,
I'd like to explain my vote. I understand it's a large department, and I appreciate everyone's work on this. I just feel that I need more time to dive into this before I can lend my support, so I'll be a no today.
Representative Tate, Representative Wilner, Representative Wilson, Chair Heverin.
Yes. Passing 13 yes, 1 pass, and 1 no. The bill passes favorably to the floor. But first, I need to do I have a motion on title amendment number 5758? Motion to have a second. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay. It passes with the title amendment. Congratulations, Senator Meredith.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. I appreciate your time and interest this morning, and we look forward to moving on. And Representative Rayburn, one of the things we will do this next session is to invite employees, invite constituents, invite special interest groups that want to talk about the operational aspect of this. So again, it's a work in progress. But thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator
members.
Meredith. The next scheduled meeting of the House Standing Committee on Families and Children is Thursday, March 16th at 8 a.m. in room 154 of the Annex. Can I get a motion for adjournment? We are finally adjourned.